They said Earth was too small, too isolated, too late to matter. For centuries, humanity looked up at the stars with wonder. We dreamed of meeting other civilizations, of building something bigger than ourselves. We told stories about peace among the stars or great wars fought in the void. But we never thought the first contact would happen like this, without warning, without preparation, and not on our terms. It began with a sound. Not a voice or a message. Just a deep, vibrating hum that pulsed through Earth's upper atmosphere like a heartbeat, too low to hear but strong enough to be felt in bones and teeth. The first ones to notice were in orbit. Satellites glitched. Communication relays dropped off for seconds at a time. The space station crew filed a report, but it was already too late. The sky changed. A faint shimmer appeared near the edge of the moon's orbit, like heat rising from asphalt, but stretching hundreds of kilometers wide. At first, the shimmer didn't do anything. It just hung there, silent, for days. Governments scrambled to figure out what it was. Scientists argued. News stations speculated. Civilians panicked. Then a ship came through. Not sleek, not silver, not anything like the old stories. It was jagged, broken-looking, like a floating mountain torn from some other world and wrapped in black steel. No lights. No flags. No attempt to communicate. It didn't matter. The moment it arrived, something changed in people. All across Earth, from the cold reaches of Siberia to the rainforests of the Amazon, people just stopped. A silence fell over cities. Not because the ship had done anything, but because everyone all at once felt the same thing deep inside. We were being watched. Not by something curious, by something hungry. The first attack didn't come for another 40 hours. Long enough for Earth's leaders to debate what to do. Long enough for fighter squadrons to be scrambled. Long enough for the United Nations to hold a shaky emergency broadcast, urging calm while quietly fueling up silos and pushing warships into high orbit. None of it helped. The attack came swift and silent. No warning. No declaration. Just a single spear of white-hot energy that cut through a military satellite and vaporized it in an instant. The blast wasn't aimed at Earth. It was a message. A test. A way to say, we're here. What are you going to do about it? We responded the only way humans know how. We fought back. Orbital defenses fired. Lasers. Railguns. Even nukes. Most of it didn't reach the ship. Those that did didn't do much. The enemy didn't retaliate right away. It just absorbed the punishment, waited, and then sent a single, smaller craft drifting toward Earth. It didn't fire. It didn't land. It just fell. And when it hit, somewhere in the Nevada desert, it didn't explode. It didn't shatter. It burrowed into the ground like it belonged there and stayed quiet. That's when the mission was formed. They didn't have a name for it. No banners. No medals. Just a handful of soldiers, scientists, and civilians shoved into a convoy and told to get to the crash site before anyone else did. They were chosen for different reasons. Some volunteered, some were forced, some just happened to be close when the order came down. There was a woman with a burn across her cheek who hadn't spoken since her unit died in orbit. There was a young linguist who used to translate for tourists but now carried a sidearm. There was a tech who only wanted to fix drones, not pull pieces of alien metal from smoking craters. And there was a man, older than the others, who didn't wear any insignia but walked like he had nothing left to lose. He didn't talk much. Just watched the skies. The convoy moved fast, cutting across highways, ignoring checkpoints, taking backroads where they could. News of the crash had already leaked. Civilians were trying to get close, live streaming from phones, shouting theories. Some thought it was fake. Some said it was the end of the world. No one really knew what it was. When they got there, the crater was still steaming. Black sand fused into glass. Chunks of metal sticking up like broken bones. Whatever had come down wasn't shaped like anything we'd ever built. No wings. No engines. Just a hard, angular shape pulsing with a low blue light, almost like it was breathing. The linguist asked if they should try talking to it. The woman with the burn just stared. The older man stepped forward, placed a hand on the surface. And that's when it woke up. Not all at once. Just a flicker, a twitch, a change in the air pressure. Static buzzed in every radio. Earpieces screamed. Everyone dropped to their knees, covering their heads, yelling for it to stop. Then came the voice. Not words. Not in any language. But emotion. Pure, raw feeling, poured into every living brain within miles. Not a message to be translated. A warning. Fear. Hunger. Violence. The tech vomited and passed out. The linguist screamed. The woman with the burn pulled her rifle and pointed it at the core of the object like it would help. The older man didn't move. He just kept his hand there, breathing slowly, eyes closed. The pulse stopped, and something changed in him. Later he wouldn't remember what he saw. Not clearly. Just flashes of dead worlds, burning skies, ships made of bone and metal ripping planets apart. He saw other species begging for peace, for understanding, only to be crushed without a second thought. He saw Earth not in the future but as it had always been, small, alone, stubborn. But he also saw something else. He saw them afraid. Not of our weapons. Not of our ships. Of something deeper. Something they didn't understand. The team didn't have time to argue. Alarms were going off. Something else had come through the rift in orbit, another ship bigger than the first. Satellites tracked it for 12 seconds before they were wiped clean from the sky. The mission was compromised. Orders changed. The object had to be moved, studied, protected, or destroyed. But none of them agreed on what it meant. The linguist said it was a probe. The tech said it was alive. The soldier said it was bait. The older man, he just said one thing. They didn't come to talk. Evac wasn't coming. The sky above the base turned dark. Not clouded. Not stormy. Just wrong. Colors that didn't belong. Movements that didn't have sources. The radios kept picking up strange signals. Clicks, whispers, sometimes human voices from people long dead. The object kept pulsing. And then something began digging its way up from beneath the crater floor. Not metal. Not a machine. Something older. The team backed off. A call went out to command but no one answered. They were alone. That's when the first drone dropped from the sky, silent, sleek, inhuman in shape. It hovered above them, scanned each of their faces, then turned toward the object in the crater. And it screamed. Not sound. Something deeper. Inside their heads. One of the soldiers opened fire. The rounds bounced off. The drone didn't react. It just kept scanning, screaming, broadcasting something to the stars. A signal. A warning. Or a call for reinforcements. The older man tackled it. He didn't have a weapon. Just grabbed it, pulled wires, tore panels free with bare hands, blood pouring from his fingers. The screen cut out. The drone dropped. Everyone stared. The object pulsed again. And then it spoke, not in feelings this time but in something almost like words. Just one phrase, etched across every screen, every display, every device within range. They are not the first. The soldier whispered, "What does that mean?" No one had an answer. In orbit, the second ship was lowering something toward Earth. Not another drone. Not a weapon. Something larger. Organic. Whatever it was coming fast. The older man turned to the team, blood on his hands, eyes wide, and said, "We were never alone. We were just too far away to hear the screams." And then the ground beneath the object cracked open and something reached out, not to attack but to choose. A shape, like liquid metal, like a shadow in motion, surged upward toward the team. Not random. Not wild. It was picking someone. The tech tried to run. The soldier raised her rifle. The linguist backed away, hands shaking. The shadow stopped in front of the older man. It paused. And then it moved into him. His body arched. He gasped. His eyes turned pitch black. And the object, now dim, went dark completely. No one moved. The man stood there, breathing hard, swaying. Then he looked up at the sky, smiled, and said, "They were right to fear us." The sky above them split open with light. The second ship had arrived. The countdown to Earth's first galactic war had already begun. And the man, now something more than human, just whispered, "Let them come." No one moved. The older man, if he could still be called that, stood motionless, his back to them, staring up at the sky as the alien ship began to descend. His breath came in sharp bursts. The others stayed frozen, afraid to speak, afraid to move. The air felt thick, too heavy to breathe, like something unseen was pressing down on the desert. The soldier raised her rifle, but her hands were shaking now. Not from fear of the ship, but from what she had just seen. That man had touched something none of them understood. That dark, shifting thing, it went into him. Changed him. And he let it. The linguist spoke first, barely above a whisper. Did he invite it in? The tech didn't answer. He just stared at the man who hadn't turned around once. None of this was in the mission briefing. No one had mentioned creatures that could crawl into your body, or objects that could speak in emotion, or alien ships that screamed into your mind. This was something else. Something old. Something buried so deep even Earth's oldest myths couldn't name it. A gust of wind rolled over the crater, carrying heat and dust. The soldier took a step forward. "We need to get out of here," she muttered. "He's compromised. We don't know what he is now." Before anyone could stop her, she called out, "Turn around." Slowly. The man didn't move. I said. I heard you, he said. His voice didn't echo the way it had before. It was quieter now. Grounded. Human. He turned. His eyes were normal. No black. No glow. Just tired eyes, sun-wrinkled skin, dried blood on his cheeks and hands. The dark thing was gone, or maybe it had settled deeper inside. I'm still me, he said softly. But I saw them. I saw everything. What are they? The tech asked. The man looked down at his hands. They're not a species. Not like us. Not a government. Not explorers. They're something else. Something that survives by taking. They don't want planets. They don't want trade or peace. They want to feed. And they feed on thought. On life. On memory. The linguist flinched. You're talking like they're parasites. Not exactly, he replied. They don't enter through biology. They don't infect cells. They rewrite the mind. From the inside. Thoughts stop being yours. You become part of them. But why Earth? The soldier asked. Why now? He didn't answer. The object in the crater was dead quiet now. No light. No pulse. The man looked at it with something close to pity. That thing, they didn't send it to attack us. It was running. The others stared at him. What? It wasn't a weapon. It was fleeing. Escaping. Escaping what? The tech asked. He pointed up. Them. The tension tightened like a noose. Above, the alien ship was no longer hovering. It was lowering toward the atmosphere, moving with slow, deliberate grace. Like it wasn't in a hurry, because it knew nothing on Earth could stop it. It didn't need speed. It had inevitability. The soldier backed away, checked her rifle again out of habit. So what's the plan? If we're not evacuating? We can't leave, the man said. Not yet. Why not? Because if we leave this thing here, he nodded to the dead object, they'll take it back. And they'll learn what it learned about us. What did it learn? The linguist asked. He looked at each of them. That we don't give in easy. The silence that followed said more than words. It was true. Humans were flawed. Messy. Violent even. But they didn't break the way others did. Not always. And that resilience, that defiance, wasn't in their machines or weapons. It was in their minds. That made Earth dangerous to creatures that fed on surrender. But that danger could be a curse. Because if the invaders couldn't feed on Earth, they might choose to destroy it instead. The soldier's voice was hoarse now. Then we hold the site. That's our only option. The tech looked like he wanted to run but nodded. The linguist sat down slowly on the edge of a broken slab of metal. We're not ready for this. We're not trained for, he swallowed, voice cracking. For any of this. The man sat beside him, wiped blood from his palm. No one's ready for the first war. Above them, a rumble began to grow. Not thunder. Something deeper. The ship in the sky, bigger than a city block, was opening. It didn't have hangars. No bays or ports. It just peeled apart like skin stretched too tight. And inside, rows upon rows of long, thin shapes began to emerge. They weren't drones. They weren't soldiers. They were seeds. The man stood. They're going to plant something, he said. Like weapons? The tech asked. Like roots? Roots that would grow down through rock and soil, feeding on thought, digging into minds like fingers through wet clay. And once they reached the population centers, Earth wouldn't fall in flames. It would fall in silence. The soldier called for defensive positions. It was a reflex. She didn't expect to win, just to buy time. For what, she didn't know. Maybe a signal. Maybe someone was listening. Maybe the rest of the world would wake up before it was too late. They deployed what little gear they had, small turrets, sensor drones, infrared scanners. Useless against what was coming, but it gave them focus. The man didn't take cover. He stood at the edge of the crater, hands clenched, watching the sky like he was daring it to come down on him. The tech stepped up beside him. That thing inside you, is it still there? I don't think so. You think or you know? I think, he said again. The younger man swallowed hard. Okay. The seeds began to fall. Not fast. They drifted. Gliding through the air like leaves, trailing faint traces of dark mist behind them. One landed on a ridge to the north. Another on a hilltop. A third near a distant highway. Then nothing happened. For 30 seconds the world held its breath. Then the ground shook. The seeds didn't explode. They opened. Each one split into twisting limbs, stretching into the soil, vanishing beneath Earth's surface. A low hum began to rise, not sound but pressure. Like gravity was turning sideways. The soldier gritted her teeth. We need to take them out before they get too deep. How? The linguist asked. We don't even know what they are. The man spoke without looking away. We don't have to understand them. We just have to deny them what they came for. And what is that? The tech asked. Our minds, he said. Our fear. Our memories. They came for surrender. We don't give them that. He stepped forward. The others hesitated, then followed. They moved across the desert toward the closest route. When they reached it, the soldier opened fire. The bullets tore into the alien flesh. It didn't bleed. It didn't stop moving. But it slowed, twitched, twisted. The tech pulled a plasma torch from his kit. If it lives, it burns. He carved into the root, slicing deep. Steam hissed out, thick and bitter. The thing recoiled into the earth. They didn't cheer. They moved to the next one. It became a rhythm. Fight. Burn. Move. No time to think. No time to feel. Just action. Desperation. Sweat and ash. But every time they burned one, two more landed. The linguist stopped running. This is endless, he said, breath catching. There's no winning this. They're not even trying to fight. Just spread. That's the fight, the man said. They want us to believe it's already over. And for a moment it almost worked. They stood on a ridge now, looking out over a valley. More seeds were falling. Dozens now, maybe hundreds. Black trails across the sky. The world below was already changing. Plants wilting. Animals fleeing. Buildings beginning to crack, stone by stone. They're reshaping the planet, the tech said. No, the older man replied. They're reshaping us. The soldier looked at him. You said you saw their worlds. What happened to them? He didn't answer for a long time. Silence, he said finally. That's all that's left. Worlds without voices. Civilizations that forgot they ever existed. The linguist shuddered. What do we do then? If we can't beat them? We remind them what it means to be human. The soldier raised her rifle. That usually involves explosives. The tech cracked a thin smile. I like that part. The man turned to them, eyes dark with fire now, not alien but something older. Something human. The kind of fury that builds not from hate, but from love for something that refuses to be taken. We don't let them in, he said. Not in our thoughts. Not in our fear. We fight not just to survive, but to stay ourselves. In the distance, another signal cut through the noise. A human one. Someone else was broadcasting. It wasn't a military channel. It wasn't encrypted. It was a civilian radio tower hijacked by someone screaming into the dark. They were saying the same thing over and over again. We are still here. We are still fighting. If you can hear this, resist. The man smiled. The roots of Earth were deeper than alien minds could reach. Hope didn't have to be loud. Just had to be real. The soldier called it in. Signal verified. North sector. Survivors. Let's get to them, the man said. They started running again, this time not away from something, but toward it. Behind them, the sky began to boil. The alien ship wasn't passive anymore. It had felt the resistance. It had felt something it didn't expect. Pushback. From a planet too small to matter. From a species that refused to kneel. The ship opened wider. And something new began to descend. Not a seed. Not a drone. Something alive. And this time it was coming straight for them. The man stopped, turned, and whispered, "Now we see what they're really afraid of." The others followed his gaze. And the ground trembled again. But none of them ran. The silence inside the base had changed. It wasn't just the absence of noise. It was heavy now, like it had shape and weight. The kind of silence that made every breath sound too loud, every footstep feel like a shout in the dark. People didn't talk much anymore. When they did, it was in whispers, like they were afraid something out there was listening. No one said it out loud, but they all felt it. Something was coming. Something worse than what they'd already seen. The commander barely slept. Lines had formed beneath his eyes, deep and worn like scars. He kept staring at the monitors, reviewing data that didn't make sense. Every reading, every scan, every trace of movement outside told him the same thing. The land around them was alive, but not in a way anyone understood. Not anymore. And the people, his people, they were slipping. Some started forgetting things. Others swore they saw shadows moving when nothing was there. One woman had broken down sobbing after swearing she heard her son's voice outside the walls. Her son had died back on the ship. Riley, the comms officer, stayed locked in the control room for hours each day, cycling through static feeds and cracked signals. She hadn't spoken much since the signal they picked up 2 days ago. The one with no known origin. The one in a human voice repeating a simple phrase over and over, "Not safe. Not safe. Not safe." The voice sounded like it had been crying. They traced the signal to a region called the Low Valley. A dead zone. No life. No structures. Just a stretch of barren land surrounded by ridges that looked like they'd been carved by something enormous. And yet, the signal kept coming from there. Same voice. Same words. Always in a loop. Like a warning or a plea. The commander had sent a drone. It never came back. The next morning, one of the guards found it, or what was left of it, on the ground near the south perimeter. It had been torn open like a tin can, its camera ripped out, wires hanging like exposed nerves. No burn marks. No bullet holes. Just raw force. They buried what was left and stopped talking about drones. Still, the pressure grew. Supplies were running thin. Solar panels weren't drawing in enough energy anymore, like the sunlight itself was being filtered. They tested the atmosphere again and it had shifted. Slightly. Subtle changes in chemical makeup. Harmless on their own. But taken together, it felt like the planet was adapting. Watching them. The mission scientist, Dr. Lin, had been the first to suggest it. She'd stood in the middle of the lab, pale and shaking, and said quietly, "I think it's learning from us." No one had answered. What could they say? But she was right. Things moved in patterns that matched their routines. Machines failed just after their last maintenance window. The walls creaked in sync with their footsteps. And when the wind blew, it didn't howl anymore. It whispered. Riley had played a recording of the wind for the commander. It was soft, broken up by static, but clear enough. Voices. Familiar voices. Ones that shouldn't be out there. He'd told her to delete it. She didn't. She listened to it at night. Then the scratching started. At first it was just on the outer walls. A soft, rhythmic sound like claws on metal. Then it moved to the air vents. Then to the doors. Always the same rhythm. Like a slow tap. Tap, tap. Some nights it lasted for hours. Other nights it stopped the second someone moved. They tried to ignore it. Tried to tell themselves it was wind or thermal stress or maybe the metal settling. But no one really believed that. The commander finally ordered a scouting team to move toward the low valley. Just 3 people. Enough to investigate without drawing too much attention. He didn't want to send anyone, but he had no choice. They couldn't stay in the dark forever. The volunteers didn't hesitate. Jackson, an engineer with a sharp mind and quiet voice. Miro, a former rescue pilot who'd seen 3 wars and carried a scar across her neck. And Dr. Lin, who insisted on going herself. They left at dawn, carrying what little they could. The rest of the crew watched them go, silent, hopeful, terrified. They lost contact with them an hour before sunset. No screams. No explosions. Just static. Riley tried every frequency. Nothing came back. The commander didn't sleep that night. None of them did. They sat together in the central hall, waiting. Listening. Hoping. Then just past midnight the base lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then darkness. Backup generators kicked in, casting the base in a low red glow. Emergency lighting. A warning more than a comfort. That's when the voices returned. But they weren't coming from the radio anymore. They came from the vents. From the empty rooms. From the dark. Soft. Calling names. Asking questions. Laughing. One of the maintenance crew locked himself in the storage closet and wouldn't come out. When they finally opened the door, he was gone. No sign of struggle. No broken locks. Just his comms unit, still playing a child's lullaby on repeat. People started to break. Not with screams or panic, but with silence. Staring at nothing. Refusing to move. Some just sat in corners, muttering to themselves. Others kept their backs to the walls, afraid to face whatever might be behind them. The commander ordered everyone into the central room and sealed the doors. He stood in front of them, trying to be strong, trying to speak like a leader. But his voice shook. "We wait until morning. We stay together." Someone whispered, "We won't make it to morning." And then the sound came again. The scratching. But this time it was inside. Not at the walls. Inside the base. Closer. Louder. Coming toward them. They held their breath. Riley clutched the recorder in her lap, fingers tight. She hit play. The wind came through again. And the voice. Only this time, it wasn't saying "not safe." It was saying, "I see you." No one moved. No one spoke. Outside, the world was watching. And inside, something had finally opened the door. The red emergency lights flickered again, briefly flashing to total darkness, then snapping back like a dying breath. No one dared to move. The silence was unbearable now, thicker than before, as if the air itself refused to carry sound. Every face in that room had gone pale. Every eye fixed on the sealed door. They could all hear it, whatever was inside. The scratching had stopped, but something was breathing in the dark. Not fast. Not heavy. Just slow, calm. Like it had time. Like it knew they didn't. The commander's hand hovered over the manual override. He didn't dare touch it. He just stared at the panel, every muscle frozen. Riley reached for her recorder again, fumbling with numb fingers. The loop had changed. She knew it. The voice wasn't just repeating itself anymore. It was responding. She played the clip again. This time the words were different. "We remember you." Her blood went cold. She looked up at the commander, eyes wide. "They're not copying us," she whispered. "They're remembering us." The commander didn't get a chance to respond. The floor beneath them shuddered. A low rumble rolled through the room like a pulse. Not an explosion. Not machinery. Something deeper. Natural. Alive. Dr. Lin's voice broke through the silence. "They're not invading us, we're inside them." No one moved. The idea didn't make sense at first. But then the pieces began to slide into place, quietly, horribly. The shifts in the atmosphere. The changing gravity. The electrical interference. The hallucinations. They weren't symptoms of the planet. They were symptoms of something much larger. The planet was alive. And it wasn't just watching. It was studying. Trying to understand who these humans were. How they worked. What they feared. What they loved. And now, what broke them. The second plot twist wasn't in what the planet was doing. It was why. Riley's screen blinked to life on its own. No one touched it. No one breathed. Lines of text began to appear. Not code. Not an error. Words. "We gave you time." More lines followed. "You did not listen. You do not stop. You do not learn." And then the final one. "You will be remembered." The lights cut out completely. Not flickering. Not failing. Deliberate. The darkness wasn't just absence of light anymore. It had shape now. Movement. It curled in the corners like smoke, folding in on itself, watching from all angles. Then out of nowhere the intercoms burst to life. Not with static. With a clear voice. It was Jackson. They hadn't heard his voice since he left for the low valley. "Don't come looking," he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried something behind it. Not fear. Acceptance. "They're not what we thought. This isn't a war. It's a test." The transmission ended. Dr. Lin stumbled back, eyes wide. "That's not Jackson. That can't be Jackson." The commander grabbed the comms panel. "Jackson, respond. Where are you?" Silence. And then, "You already know." The lights blinked on for a half second. Just long enough to see the wet footprints leading into the central hall. Bare feet. Human-sized. The prints stopped just short of where they were sitting. And then vanished. The room erupted into chaos. People screaming, others pushing away from the prints, some dropping to the floor, sobbing. The commander fired his sidearm into the dark out of instinct. The sound of the shots felt empty, meaningless. Nothing bled. Nothing fell. Riley backed against the far wall, trying to make sense of what was happening. Then her tablet lit up again. A new message appeared. Not from the system. Not from Earth. It simply said, "You left something behind." Then came a picture. A face. A child. Her sister's daughter. The one who died during the first deployment years ago, lost when a rogue AI ship malfunctioned and crashed into the Pacific Command hub. She dropped the tablet like it burned her. It clattered across the floor. The commander approached it slowly, staring at the image. This isn't possible. But the truth was clear. Whatever this intelligence was, it had access to more than just their tech. It had access to them. Their past. Their losses. Their guilt. And it was using it. Not as a weapon. As a mirror. "You still don't see," came the voice again. This time over the intercom. A new wave of messages flashed across every screen, every surface, even etched themselves temporarily onto the walls in light. "Your kind burns worlds. You call it progress. You do not stop. You do not change." A long pause. Then one last line glowing brighter than the rest. "You are not the first." They thought Earth's first galactic conflict had begun when they stepped foot on this planet. But it hadn't. This was a continuation. The result of something started long ago by humans they never knew, on missions never recorded. Whole histories erased. Covered up. Forgotten. And now, remembered by something that never forgot. The planet, if it even was a planet, had seen humanity before. And it had survived them. The commander turned to Dr. Lin. Did we cause this? She didn't answer. She just stared at the monitors as images flickered across them. Not just faces, cities, ships, worlds burning, Earth ships, old ones, from missions marked classified, scrap, lost in deep space. Except they weren't lost. They were buried. The second conflict wasn't starting. It had been waiting. And now it was waking up. The scratching returned. But this time it was everywhere. Above, below, inside the walls. And then one by one people began to vanish. Not in blood. Not in violence. Just gone. As if erased. As if pulled into something deeper than space or time. Riley clutched the recorder and whispered, "They're showing us the end." Dr. Lin's voice shook. "No. They're showing us the truth." Then, just as the fear reached its peak, when it felt like nothing could get worse, the sky opened. Not a storm. Not weather. The sky itself. The clouds pulled apart like torn fabric. And behind them, something was watching. Vast. Motionless. Unblinking. Not a ship. Not a being. An eye. And it saw them. All of them. For the first time in humanity's history, the question wasn't what lay beyond the stars. The question was, who had been watching the whole time? And why were they remembering Earth now? The red lights died. And the story paused. With hearts racing. Breath held. And the knowledge that the real conflict hadn't even begun yet. The ground split open beneath them. A long, deep rupture tore through the corridor, glowing faintly with something that didn't look like fire but moved like it. Riley jumped back just in time, landing hard, wind knocked from her lungs. The heat didn't burn. It pulsed. As if whatever was rising from below wasn't flame, but memory. The commander pulled her to her feet, dragging her toward the comms room as more cracks spread out like veins through the metal floors. The structure groaned all around them, no longer under stress from gravity or shifting terrain. It sounded more like it was being peeled apart. "Where are we going?" Riley yelled, dust choking her throat. "We make contact," the commander shouted. "We face it. It's the only way." Face what? She wanted to ask. But part of her already knew. It wasn't about a military victory anymore. Not about retreating. Not even survival. It was about acknowledgement. Whatever intelligence had been testing them, tormenting them, remembering them, wanted something. And maybe, just maybe, understanding it was their only chance. They reached the central interface chamber, the heart of their base. The screens were all black now except one. The one Riley had dropped earlier. On it was her niece again, but she wasn't smiling now. Her eyes were locked onto Riley's like she could actually see her. The image flickered, shimmered, and then faded into something new. An old mission log. One never meant to be found. The footage played itself. Grainy. Broken audio. The date on it was from decades ago, before the official expansion into deep space. Before humanity claimed to be ready for the stars. On the screen, an early Earth vessel hovered over a small green world, lush, untouched, teeming with primitive life. They'd wiped it clean. Not by accident. Not out of fear. For testing. Establishing a forward colony, the voice in the log said. Initial purge complete. No threats remain. Riley staggered back, horror washing over her. They knew, all this time. Earth knew. Dr. Lin had reappeared from the side hall, dirt streaking her face. She looked haunted but not surprised. This wasn't the first contact. It was the reckoning. The footage changed again. Faces of those lost crews. Dozens of ships. Hundreds of lives. Sacrificed. Erased from public records. Not because they failed. Because they succeeded, and what they did couldn't be known. The commander's jaw tightened. So this was all payback? No, Lin said. Not revenge. Warning. The base began to collapse in slow motion around them. But it wasn't just breaking. It was being disassembled. Lifted. Unraveled. As if the planet, or the intelligence beneath it, was peeling back everything artificial layer by layer. And then it spoke. Not through speakers. Not in their ears. Inside their heads. You hid your sins. You erased your past. But memory lives in matter. You do not deserve the stars. The eye in the sky opened again, wider now, until it filled the horizon. They all fell to their knees, not from force. From something deeper. A gravity of truth. The weight of all they hadn't known until now. But just when it felt like they would be swallowed, something changed. A voice rose, not alien, not ancient. Human. Riley stood up. And she answered. No. We don't deserve them. Not yet. But we can learn. The eye blinked. The silence held. Then the light shifted, softened. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't destruction either. A new message formed in the air between them, written in symbols at first, then translated into words they could read. Then show us. The wind stilled. The cracks in the ground stopped growing. The heat faded. And the sky, slowly closed. The base remained torn, the damage done, but the collapse halted. A second chance? Maybe. Maybe not. Dr. Lin walked to the center and said, "They're giving us one moment. Just one. To prove we're more than what we were." The commander reached for the transmission beacon, now glowing with new data. It pulsed with coordinates. Not home. Not Earth. A new destination. A challenge. An invitation. Or a final test. They prepared the emergency vessel. It wasn't enough for a full crew. Only 3 could go. The commander, Dr. Lin, and Riley stepped inside, leaving the ruins behind, leaving the failures and secrets of their past buried in the broken steel and soil. As the vessel rose into the sky, the planet did not attack. It watched. They broke atmosphere. And for a moment, just before they jumped into the unknown, Riley looked down at the world they'd thought was just another lifeless rock. It blinked. Then she looked forward. Toward whatever was waiting on the other end of that signal. The stars had never been a prize. They were a mirror. And now humanity had to decide what it truly looked like. But just as the jump activated, just as the stars twisted into a blur, another signal came through. Faint. From Earth. Not a warning. Not a recall. A confession. A second archive locked for generations. Riley saw the last words before it vanished. They made contact before we did. And then, silence. The silence after the signal wasn't empty. It felt thick, like space itself had leaned in to whisper something, then stopped right before finishing. Inside the vessel, Riley stared at the last fragment of the message, trying to hold on to it, as if remembering it a second longer would force the rest to appear. But it didn't. They made contact before we did. That sentence hung in the cabin like a ghost no one invited. The commander didn't speak. Dr. Lin leaned forward, hands trembling just slightly, not from fear this time, but from the slow realization that their entire history might have been shaped by something no one ever talked about. The stars outside drifted as the ship traveled along the new coordinates. They weren't even sure if the data was trustworthy. It could have been another test, or a trap, or something else. But none of them turned back. They passed through the last cloud of solar dust on the edge of the system. Beyond that was open space. Uncharted, raw, honest space. The signal grew stronger the closer they got. Not like a message, more like a pull. Not magnetic. Emotional. Then finally the ship's sensors registered a planet. Small. Cold. Not on any charts. Covered in what looked like ash. But it was alive. Barely. No signs of cities. No signals. Just a heartbeat. One that pulsed beneath the crust, slow and deep. "Set us down," the commander said. They landed on a flat stretch of gray stone, wind brushing over the hull like whispers again. Riley opened the hatch, stepping out first. The air was thin but breathable. It smelled like burned soil and something older, like metal left out in the rain for centuries. Dr. Lin knelt by the ground and touched the dirt. "These trees," she said, pointing to the stumps surrounding them. "They were cut down. Not recently. A long time ago. Look at the burns. Laser precision." The commander scanned the ridge ahead. This place was alive. Then someone took it apart and buried the evidence. The ground vibrated again, softly this time, like someone sighing beneath them. They walked toward a canyon where the signal led. Down the narrow path, rock faces rising on both sides, the silence grew even thicker. At the bottom was a single arch carved by hand, or claw, or tool. They didn't know. It had the same markings as the symbols they saw in the base. But this time it wasn't translated. The message was meant to be felt, not read. Riley stepped through. And then everything changed. No storm. No light. No collapse. Just memory. It rushed into her all at once. Not hers. Not Earth's. Theirs. Whoever lived here, before, had made contact. Not with Earth. With something deeper. Something far beyond either world. They had reached out into space, vulnerable, hopeful. They'd offered peace, curiosity, kinship. And what came back wasn't war. It was fear. Not from the stars. From Earth. She saw it play out like fragments in a dream. The ships that had come. Not for conquest. For control. Preemptive action. Earth had feared what might happen if someone else got there first. If someone else became stronger. So they struck before anything could grow. The world burned. Not in fire but in silence. Whole histories erased, lives vaporized, languages lost in seconds. Riley staggered as the memories faded. Dr. Lin caught her. "They didn't start this war," Riley said quietly. "We did. We've just been running from it ever since." They stood at the edge of what looked like a crater, but it wasn't. It was a grave. A circular ring of stones surrounded a center platform, where a single item remained, a sculpture. Half organic, half metal. A depiction of two hands, one human, one alien, almost touching. They never did. That sculpture was a message. A memory frozen in time. A wish that had gone unanswered. And now they were standing in its shadow. The commander looked around and said, "What do we tell Earth?" Riley thought for a long time before answering. "The truth." That night they slept near the sculpture. No voices came. No warnings. Just silence. But it wasn't threatening anymore. It felt like acknowledgement. In the morning they prepared the transmission. The data logs. The archives. The confession from Earth's own past. The records of the first contact. Hidden away, buried under decades of lies and rebranding. They sent everything. Not just to Earth. To the network. To any species still listening. And then they waited. It took a week for Earth to respond. And when it did, it wasn't through a commander. It wasn't through a politician. It was a simple message from a child on Earth, broadcast unintentionally as the network scrambled. It said, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt anyone." That message echoed louder than any order or apology ever could. It reminded everyone what had been lost. Innocence. Honesty. And what still remained. Hope. The planet began to change slowly. Not with technology. Not with healing beams or magic soil. But with presence. The more time they spent there, the more the world responded. The ashes grew thinner. The wind changed. Flowers that had long been dormant began to push through the cracks in the stone. Blue petals. Bright, stubborn things that didn't care how long the dark had lasted. They just bloomed. Dr. Lin stayed behind. She volunteered to learn, to archive, to honor what had been lost. Not to rebuild a colony, but to remember one. The commander returned to Earth. He brought the truth with him. Faced the officials. Faced the shame. Riley left the ship last. She didn't go back to Earth or stay on the planet. She went further. She followed the rest of the signal, beyond the system, into the dark places where no one had been. She found other ruins. Other signals. Other voices that had stopped speaking, waiting for someone to listen again. And everywhere she went, she carried that memory. That sculpture. The image of a hand reaching out. Almost touching. But not yet. Years passed. Stories spread. People called it Earth's first galactic conflict. But those who knew better gave it a different name. The moment we remembered, it became a lesson in schools. A caution in missions. And a reason to pause before reacting. Earth changed slowly, unevenly, but it changed. Not because it had to, but because people chose to. Because someone had stepped through the fire, heard the silence, and still decided to reach back. One day, a new sculpture was placed on the old world. This time the hands touched. And beneath it, in small human script, were the words, "We are not perfect, but we remember, and we try." The stars did not punish. They did not reward. They simply watched. And for the first time in a long time, they waited.